My mother looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're 22. You'll figure it out. Your sister needs your room more than you do." That was the moment I realized I wasn't being asked to leave. I was being replaced. They didn't just kick me out of my childhood home. They handed my life to my younger sister and told me to go live in the streets. So I did. And 3 years later, I bought the house out from under them. Stick with me. My name is Harper Caldwell. I was 22 at the time, working full-time at a medical office and finishing my last year at community college. I lived at home because it made sense. I paid rent every month. I helped with groceries, utilities, and anything my parents said they needed. I didn't party. I didn't cause problems. I thought we were a team. That illusion shattered one night at the kitchen table. My parents, Dennis and Marla, sat across from me like they were delivering bad news to a stranger. My younger sister Lila had dropped out of college again and moved back home. According to them, she needed space. Somehow, that space turned out to be my bedroom. They told me I had 2 weeks to move out. I remember blinking, waiting for the joke. It never came. I asked where they expected me to go. My mom shrugged and said, "You're older. You'll manage." My dad avoided my eyes and stared at his coffee like it had the answers. Lila didn't even pretend to feel bad. The next day, I came home from work and found her sitting on my bed, scrolling on her phone. My posters were already coming down. My closet door was open. She smiled and said, "I figured I'd start moving in early. Hope that's okay." It wasn't okay, but no one cared. While I packed boxes after my shifts, Lila lounged around, ordering takeout with my parents' credit card. I overheard my mom tell an aunt on the phone that I was being selfish and dramatic. My dad said it was time I learned how the real world worked. By the end of 2 weeks, everything I owned fit into my car. On my last night, I placed my house key on the counter. No one asked for it. No one hugged me. Lila was already asleep in my room. As I walked out, it finally hit me. This wasn't sudden. This was favoritism I had ignored for years. And this time, it broke something I couldn't fix by forgiving. The days after that talk felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. I packed my things after work, one box at a time, while Lila lay on my bed like it already belonged to her. She didn't even try to hide it. My clothes were pushed to one side, my books stacked carelessly on the floor. She laughed on the phone with her friends, talking about how nice it was to finally have space. I packed in silence. Every drawer I opened felt like proof that none of this mattered to them. I folded my clothes neatly, the same way I always had, even though no one was watching. I kept hoping my parents would come in and say this had gone too far. They never did. When I asked if we could talk about more time, my mother sighed like I was exhausting her. She said, "We already explained it, Harper. Don't make this harder than it has to be." My dad just nodded, arms crossed, like the discussion was closed. That night, I heard them in the living room. I wasn't trying to listen, but their voices carried. My mom said I was being selfish, that I should be grateful they'd let me stay this long. My dad agreed, saying I needed a push to grow up. I stood in the hallway holding a box of old photos, my hands shaking. The next morning, Lila leaned against the doorframe and watched me struggle with a suitcase. She smirked and said, "You're older. You should be independent by now." Then she stepped over my boxes and went back to my bed, and turned on the TV. I realized then that no one was going to help me. Not with packing. Not with money. Not with finding a place to go. I was on my own. By the end of the second week, my room was empty. White walls. Carpet marks where my bed used to be. Everything I owned was crammed into my car, stacked so high I could barely see out the back window. Things I loved but couldn't fit were left behind without a second thought. Before I walked out, I paused by the counter. My house key felt heavy in my hand. No one asked for it. No one looked up. I set it down quietly and slid it toward my parents. Then I picked up my bag, walked out the door, and didn't look back. I didn't move into an apartment or a new room. I moved onto a couch. A coworker named Jenna said I could stay for a little while. I thanked her like she'd saved my life, because in a way she had. Her living room smelled like coffee and laundry soap, and every night I folded myself onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. I woke up early so I wouldn't be in her way. I worked full shifts, then came back and tried to be invisible. I kept my bags packed in case she changed her mind. I washed my dishes right away. I cleaned things she didn't ask me to clean. I hated how small I felt. I was exhausted all the time. My body hurt, my head hurt, and my chest felt tight with anger I didn't know where to put. At work, I smiled and acted normal. On breaks, I sat in my car and cried quietly so no one would see. The first week, my mom texted once to ask if I was settled. I said I was fine. She never replied. My dad didn't call at all. Days turned into weeks, and the silence grew louder than any argument we'd had. It became clear they weren't worried. They were relieved. That's when I understood the truth. I had never been supported. I had been tolerated. As long as I paid rent, helped with bills, and stayed out of the way, I was useful. The moment I needed them, I became a problem. That realization hurt more than being kicked out. Something changed in me after that. I stopped waiting for an apology that wasn't coming. I stopped hoping they'd check in or ask how I was surviving. Instead, I opened a new savings account and started putting every extra dollar into it. I stopped buying coffee. I packed cheap lunches. I picked up extra shifts whenever I could. I tracked every expense and cut anything that wasn't necessary. The couch wasn't comfortable, but it gave me something I hadn't had before: focus. Survival mode slowly turned into a plan. Each deposit into my savings felt like a small win. Each day I made it through without breaking felt like proof I was stronger than they thought. I was tired, angry, and hurt, but I was no longer lost. I wasn't just trying to get by anymore. I was building a way out. I didn't hear about what was happening at home from my parents. They didn't call to explain or admit anything. I found out through other people, the same way I always did. An aunt mentioned it first, casually, like it was gossip. She said Lila's room was a mess now. Clothes everywhere. Dishes stacked up. Makeup smeared across the desk I used to keep clean. I pictured it easily. I had spent years keeping that room perfect, not because I loved cleaning, but because I knew I'd be blamed if anything went wrong. Lila didn't care. A few weeks later, I heard she'd quit her part-time job. No notice. No backup plan. She said it was too stressful. My parents didn't argue. They didn't tell her to tough it out or figure things out the way they told me. They just paid her phone bill, her gas, her food, and anything else she wanted. Meanwhile, I was counting every dollar. Updates kept coming. A cousin told me my parents were fighting more. Another relative said the house felt tense all the time. Lila slept in late, stayed out late, and left messes behind for my parents to clean up. The same parents who said I was selfish for asking for 2 more weeks. Then my mom started complaining to family about money. She said things were tight, that bills were piling up, that it was hard supporting everyone. She never said my name directly, but it was clear she was talking about me leaving and Lila staying. Still, there was no apology. No message asking how I was doing. No regret. At first, hearing all this made me angry. I wanted them to see the difference. I wanted them to admit they'd made a mistake. I wanted Lila to fail in a way that proved I had mattered. Then something surprising happened. I stopped caring. Each update felt more distant, like it was about people I used to know. I listened politely, nodded, and changed the subject. I didn't rush to defend myself or explain my side anymore. I didn't need to. The truth was clear. The golden child was falling apart, and my parents were quietly cleaning up the mess they created. I wasn't there to fix things, and for the first time, that wasn't my problem. I focused on my own life. Work. Saving. Resting when I could. The more I pulled away emotionally, the lighter I felt. Detachment didn't come from anger. It came from acceptance. They had made their choice, and I was done carrying it. Life didn't suddenly get easy, but it started to move forward. One afternoon, my manager asked me to step into her office. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, she told me I was being promoted. More responsibility, more hours, and a real raise. I nodded calmly, but inside my hands were shaking. That raise meant options. It meant I could breathe a little. I celebrated quietly. No posts. No calls home. Just a long walk after work and a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. With more income, I got serious about my credit. I pulled my report, paid off small balances, and set reminders so nothing was ever late. I read articles on my phone during lunch breaks and asked questions at the bank without feeling embarrassed. Every point I gained felt like another brick laid under my feet. I kept my life simple. Same couch. Same routines. Same goal. Then information found its way to me again through family. At a birthday dinner I didn't want to attend, my uncle complained about how bad refinancing had been for my parents. He said they took out money at the wrong time, locked into a bad rate, and now they were behind on payments. I stayed quiet and listened. Someone else added that my parents were stressed, that letters from the bank kept coming, that money was tighter than they admitted. They joked about how things used to be easier when Harper lived there. I smiled politely and said nothing. That night, I lay awake thinking about the house. The same house I had been pushed out of. The same house they said I had no right to anymore. I did some research, careful and private. Public records told me more than my parents ever had. The mortgage was behind. The house wasn't as secure as it looked. A strange calm settled over me. I didn't feel excited or angry. I felt alert, like I had spotted something important and needed to move carefully. This wasn't revenge yet. It was awareness. I didn't tell anyone what I knew. Not Jenna. Not family. Not even myself out loud. I just kept working, saving, and building my credit like nothing had changed. Inside, though, something had shifted. For the first time since being kicked out, I realized I wasn't powerless. The house that had once rejected me was suddenly fragile, and I was quietly getting stronger. The call came on a Tuesday evening, right as I was heating up leftovers on the stove. I almost didn't answer when I saw my mom's name. We hadn't spoken in months. Curiosity won. Her voice sounded softer than I remembered. Careful. She asked how I was doing like it was small talk, like nothing had happened. Then she got to the point. They were in a tight spot, she said. Just temporary. A small loan to help cover some bills until things settled. I felt my stomach twist, but my voice stayed calm. I told her I couldn't lend them money. There was a pause, long and heavy. I expected anger. Instead, she sighed and started explaining more than she meant to. Payments behind. Fees adding up. Pressure from the bank. My dad got on the phone and tried to sound confident, but I could hear the worry underneath. I didn't offer sympathy. I asked questions. How far behind were they? What kind of notices had they received? Were they talking to anyone about options? Each answer filled in a picture I already suspected. The word foreclosure wasn't said, but it hung in the air between us. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. The next day, I took a long lunch break and walked into a lender's office near my work. My hands were steady as I explained my income, my savings, my credit history. I half expected to be laughed out of the room. Instead, the loan officer smiled and said, "You're in better shape than you think." The process moved faster than I expected. Paperwork. Numbers. Conversations that felt unreal. When I was told I qualified for a mortgage, I had to sit down. Not because I was weak, but because the weight of the moment hit me all at once. I drove home in silence. That night, I thought about the kitchen table. The 2-week notice. My key left on the counter. I thought about being told to figure it out. About being replaced without hesitation. This wasn't about hurting them. It wasn't about yelling or proving a point with words. This was about taking back control in the only way that mattered. I didn't tell my parents what I was doing. I didn't warn them. I didn't ask for permission. I made my decision quietly. If they could take my home without guilt, then I could take it back the same way. Through ownership. The process took weeks, but I told almost no one. I signed papers during lunch breaks and answered calls in my car after work. Everything was legal, clean, and quiet. No tricks. No shortcuts. Just numbers, signatures, and patience. When the final approval came through, I felt strangely calm. This wasn't a rush of excitement. It felt solid, like something clicking into place after years of being loose. The house was officially mine. My parents had no idea. From what I heard, they thought a random buyer had stepped in at the last minute. Someone with good credit. Someone willing to take on the mess they had made. They complained about bad luck and unfair timing. They never once guessed it was me. I didn't correct them. I prepared myself instead. At night, I replayed memories I hadn't thought about in years. Being told to be the easy one. Being expected to understand while Lila was protected. Being praised only when I gave something up. I remembered birthdays where her gifts were bigger, arguments where my feelings came second, and that final moment when my room was taken without a second thought. Those memories didn't hurt the same way anymore. They felt distant, like proof instead of wounds. I practiced what I would say when the truth came out. Not speeches. Not insults. Just facts. I reminded myself I didn't owe them comfort or explanations. I owed myself honesty and boundaries. The power had shifted, and they didn't feel it yet. I walked past the house once, just to see it. Nothing had changed on the outside. Same paint. Same porch. Same driveway. But I felt different standing there. I wasn't the daughter waiting for approval. I wasn't the sister expected to step aside. I was the owner. That thought settled deep in my chest. Heavy but right. I didn't rush the moment. I didn't show up unannounced or make dramatic moves. I waited because I could. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to their choices. I was acting on my own. When I finally held the keys in my hand, I thought about the night I left mine on the counter. How small I had felt. How invisible. This time, the keys were given to me with respect. The house hadn't changed, but everything else had. And soon, they were going to find out exactly how much. They found out on a Friday morning. My mom called me before I even had time to get to work. Her voice was sharp and panicked. She asked if I knew anything about the ownership notice they had just received. Papers from the county. Official. Final. The house was no longer theirs. I told her I knew. There was shouting in the background. My dad demanding answers. Lila crying. My mom's voice breaking as she asked how this could be happening. I let the silence stretch before I said I would come by so we could talk. When I arrived, the house felt smaller. Tense. My parents were waiting in the living room like I was a stranger who had walked into the wrong place. Papers were spread across the coffee table. Lila sat on the stairs, hugging her knees. I didn't rush. I set my bag down and stood calmly in the center of the room. I told them the truth. I said I was the buyer. I said everything had been done legally. I said the house was mine now. My mom stared at me like she didn't recognize me. My dad stood up and started pacing, running his hands through his hair. He asked how I could do this to them. My mom called it a betrayal. She said family doesn't treat each other this way. I listened. Then I spoke. I reminded her of the night she told me to figure it out. I repeated her exact words back to her. I reminded my dad of how he said Lila needed my room more than I did. I reminded them both how they gave me 2 weeks and watched me leave without helping. They said it wasn't the same. I told them it was exactly the same. They said I was cruel. I said I was practical. They said I should have warned them. I said they never warned me. They said I was taking advantage of their hardship. I looked around the room and said, "You taught me how to survive without help." That was when the anger turned into fear. Lila started crying harder, saying she didn't know where they would go. My mom begged me to reconsider. My dad asked if there was any way to undo it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just told them the truth. They made their choice years ago. Today, I was simply living with mine. I didn't stay long after that. Once the truth was out, there was nothing left to explain. I sat down at the table, the same one where they had once told me to leave, and placed a folder in front of them. Inside was a simple notice. 2 weeks. The same amount of time they had given me. My mom stared at the paper like it couldn't be real. My dad's face went pale. Lila stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. She started crying, loud and messy, saying this wasn't fair, that she didn't know how to live like this, that she couldn't just be thrown out. I listened without interrupting. My mom reached for my hand, begging me to think about family, to think about everything they had done for me. My dad promised things would be different if I just gave them more time. He said they'd pay rent. He said Lila would get a job. He said anything he thought might work. I didn't argue. I gently pulled my hand away and told them the notice wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. I explained that I wasn't asking them to leave immediately. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't taking revenge with cruelty. I was giving them the same chance they had given me. 2 weeks to figure it out. Lila collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, saying she wasn't ready for the real world. My mom turned on me then, accusing me of being heartless. My dad asked how I could live with myself. I looked at them and said, "You asked me the same thing." That quieted the room. I told them I wouldn't discuss it further. No negotiations. No emotional bargaining. I said they were adults and they would manage. I reminded them that they had once trusted me to do the same. I stood up, feeling steady, not angry. As I walked toward the door, my mom called after me, asking where they were supposed to go. I paused and turned back just long enough to answer. "You'll figure it out." I didn't slam the door. I didn't feel proud or cruel. I felt calm. For the first time, the power wasn't being used to hurt. It was being used to protect myself. When the house was finally quiet, I moved back in. Walking through the front door felt strange at first. The rooms echoed in a way they never had before. I took my time unpacking, choosing where things went, reminding myself that this space was mine now. Not because it had been handed to me, but because I earned it. The first room I worked on was my old bedroom. The walls were scuffed, the carpet stained, and the closet was a mess. I didn't rush. I painted the walls a soft, clean color. I replaced the carpet. I set up a desk by the window and a bed that felt like a fresh start. With every small change, the room stopped feeling like a memory and started feeling like a future. I didn't invite my family over. My parents moved into a small rental across town. It wasn't comfortable or familiar, but it was what they could afford. I heard about it through relatives, the same way I always did. They were adjusting, struggling, learning things they had never bothered to teach me. Lila had no choice but to grow up. She got another job. She learned how to budget. She complained a lot, but she showed up anyway. For the first time, no one was stepping in to fix things for her. I kept my distance. I didn't block anyone. I just stopped chasing closeness that had never really been there. Calls were short. Messages were polite. I no longer explained my choices or defended my boundaries. Some people expected a happy ending. An apology. A reunion. That didn't happen. Closure, I learned, doesn't always come with forgiveness. Sometimes it comes with acceptance. I accepted that my parents had failed me. I accepted that my sister and I would never have the relationship I once hoped for. And I accepted that none of that defined my worth. Standing in my finished room one evening, I realized something important. I hadn't won because I took the house. I won because I stopped believing I deserved less. I built a life from nothing but determination and self-respect. I learned how to stand alone without becoming bitter. The house was just a symbol. The real victory was knowing I would never let anyone replace me again. If this story moved you, let it be a reminder. Favoritism and unfair treatment don't define your future. Learn your rights, build financial knowledge, and protect your independence early. Healing starts with boundaries. Growth starts with education. Self-worth is the strongest form of freedom.